Morning everybody. It's a bit chilly, but it's going to be a nice day and I've got a lawn to cut. We're heading off now. Well, I say we, it's kind of a royal we this morning because it's just me. Sophie's looking after Jasper for the day, so I am a free agent. Hopefully I've left early enough to miss the majority of the traffic because I'm off to cut my parents' lawn. Might even get a tan. Have they got milk? That's the next question, because if they haven't got milk, I don't know how I'm going to survive here. Not looking good. Ah, bingo! We're saved! Because seriously, if I couldn't get coffee... Right, let's go have a look at the grass that's causing all this trouble. Apparently it's supposed to be quite long. Doesn't look that long to me. Maybe it's longer at the end of the garden. Nope, still not that long. That's quite long. But that is the sort of quote-unquote orchard area. You know, I'm not sure my parents actually intended for me to cut the grass this week. I'm starting to think they actually meant next week. I've come this far, I'm just going to cut it. I've now got to try and remember how to turn this thing on. Oh my god. She's alive! Well, that was quite something. Explosions going off, 1.5 foot in front of my groin. I don't know, it makes me uneasy. Doesn't look too bad. Trust me, it could definitely be worse. Dad, if you're watching this, it's not my fault. This plant pot literally leapt out of nowhere. Totally invisible. Hidden in grass. I blame whoever cut the lawn last. We'll just slide that back where it came from and pop that back there like it never happened. Well, almost like it never happened. I'm not 100% sure it's supposed to be at that angle. Let's have a look at the other side. On the upside, I am 100% confident that that can be fixed. Bye-bye to the beast. Yeah. Didn't hit anything else, so that's a plus. Look at this, glorious lawn. I think it's a good effort, personally. I've always wanted to see the new Independence Day movie. Been wanting to see that for a while. Might try and sneak that in before I'm called back to duty. Better get going then. I've just checked the cinema times and it's not good news. It'll be a miracle if I get there before it starts. I'm just gonna hope that it's one of those movies with half an hour's worth of adverts before the main feature. I'll tell you something else, after all that noise and infernal racket and vibrate, this car makes a very civilized return to normality. I read something quite alarming the other day. Europe has earmarked 135 million euros to help install hydrogen stations. Why? You see, I understand where their thought process comes from on this. they're thinking to themselves, hydrogen cars are a chicken and egg problem. Well, yes, so are electric cars. The difference is that 135 million euros will barely scratch the surface of a hydrogen infrastructure. You know, maybe just about enough to provide a sort of proof of concept, perhaps. And even then, there's no guarantee that consumers will actually go for it because the vehicles are too expensive, so they'll need subsidies as well. Now, that's the difference. Electric cars no longer need a proof of concept charging infrastructure. Tesla has provided that out of the goodness of their own heart, or something along those lines. And the main barrier to electric vehicles is that the long-range ones all cost too much, and that's the problem. So if I was in charge of spending this 135 million euros, what I'd spend it on is incentives to help lower the price of EVs, long-range EVs, and I would specifically target lowering the price of long-range ones. What you're doing is enabling electric vehicles to be commercially viable before they would otherwise. So what you're effectively doing is just moving things up a little bit. They will be commercially viable. You know, batteries get cheaper and more powerful and lighter and smaller all the time. The question is, how long do you want to wait for that to actually sort of come about? You know, if you can move it up a couple of years, that could have a really big impact. Not now, you know, when moving it up a couple of years will make a sort of a rounding error's worth of difference to CO2 emissions, but in 10 or 20 years, if electric vehicles become the de facto norm 2 years sooner, that could make a massive difference. That could. So, yeah, that's what I'd spend my money on if I was them. Of course, they don't listen to me, and I'm quite sure they're going to waste 135 million euros on 70, 80 hydrogen stations, which will be able to fill up something like 300-400 cars a day, probably, when you factor in reliability issues and hydrogen storage and all the rest of it. And that's not to say anything of all the wasted energy that goes into actually trying to power cars with hydrogen. That's all I'm going to say on that subject. You know, I think the milk that I've been putting in those coffees might have turned. I'm sure it'll be fine. There should be a cinema here somewhere. Amazing news, everybody. I actually made it. You know what, I might even get some popcorn. Okay, the best thing about that movie is the cool sunglasses. And also the fact that I still have half a bag of popcorn left over. Can you believe? They're so cheeky. This was 90 pence more than the small one, and the small one was like that big. I do like popcorn though. I might, yeah, that movie, not. Don't go see it if you're expecting some massively fantastic drama, because that ain't it. That's my Independence Day Resurgence movie review concluded. Hope you've all enjoyed today's vlog post. If you have, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And see you tomorrow. Bye. The Rolls-Royce of garden mowers.